Today we're going to talk about an outbreak of human salmonella infections that were linked to frozen feeder rodents. Salmonella is a type of bacteria that is actually the leading case of foodborne illness in the United States, and infection comes from ingesting contaminated food or water, or if one comes in contact with contaminated animals or their environment. This outbreak was between January 11th and May 17th, 2014, with a total of 41 cases in 21 states. Many of these people were hospitalized, and about majority of them were female. From here, there was a possible link to Reptile Industries Incorporation's products with those 41 cases of salmonella. So the current situation shows that there were no reported cases after May 17th, 2014. Now I'm going to go through the SWOT process. The strengths here were that the CDC, public health officials, and the FDA were able to collaborate with one another and use the PulseNet system, which isolated S. typhimurium strains, and they were able to match these strains with specific individuals. And from here, once they identified the cases, they were interviewing ill people and asking them what they ate on the week prior to being infected, as well as if they had any contact with animals. So the weakness here is that the Reptile Industries Incorporation were unable to withdraw their products from PetSmart, and they were under the name Arctic Mice. That was an issue because PetSmart is a store that's available to a lot of pet owners and the general public, so this could have been a reason for the outbreak continuing. Opportunity is that the FDA suggested any Reptile Industries products purchased between January 11th and May 21st be discarded because there was no official recall. This was the best they could do. Now, the threat here is that S. typhimurium was found early in the chain of transmission, and this indicates a lack of contamination control because they were unable to effectively contain the infection. Third is to prioritize core issues. So, after the investigation, the CDC identified a link between salmonella and the frozen feeder rodents that were specifically manufactured by Reptile Industries. Now, the issue here is that there were no official recall of these frozen feeder rodents, and this could have been, like I mentioned, the reason for the outbreak continuing. So the priority here is that the FDA warning of discarding these products by that company between a certain time period is important because this could prevent infection from spreading and possibly prevent another outbreak from happening. So I use the health belief model to analyze alternatives because I think, as we can see from this photo here, that all of these approaches eventually lead to the same outcome. So the first approach here is to ensure that advising from the FDA is well known to pet owners because pet owners are the main demographic of these frozen feeder rodents. Secondly is to ensure that stores recall products manufactured by Reptile Industries Incorporation to prevent any other infections from occurring because of contaminated products. Third is to be specific about which products should be discarded, and this relates back to the recall not happening because the company was unable to identify which specific products were contaminated. Fourth is to advise infected individuals to take their full course of antibiotics because this could prevent resistance from happening, knowingly that salmonella is becoming more and more resistant to antibiotics. Fifth is to provide recommendations, so requiring the recall of products manufactured by Reptile Industries and therefore banning PetSmart from selling these products will help to slow and eventually stop the spread of salmonella. Second is to advise pet owners to dispose of frozen feeder rodents in a sealed container because this will prevent contamination with other people touching the rodents. And third, advise pet owners to clean up properly when handling feeder rodents. There's always a possibility of contaminating the areas that you eat or clean and everything like that, your daily living. Fourth is to encourage pet owners to ask third-party sellers where frozen feeders were purchased because there's always a chance that third-party sellers could purchase these contaminated products and just rip off the label and sell them again. Sixth, the action plan. Reptile Industries should comply with the CDC, public health officials, and FDA in recalling their frozen feeder rodents. And although after May 17, 2014, there were no confirmed cases of salmonella, this does not imply that there will not be any future outbreaks, especially because there was no recall that was ever done since this outbreak. Also, the general public and pet owners should be educated on the potential dangers of frozen feeder rodents. I believe that it's important to properly handle rodents in general because they're not clean at all, and coming in contact with them just puts you at risk. So, at first, I thought that salmonella was only contracted from undercooked or raw eggs and just undercooked meat in general. But after this project, I learned that there are so many ways that salmonella can spread and cause an outbreak eventually. So, from here on, I think it's important to be more attentive to recalled products as there is always a possibility of getting sick from them.